The endless void of space stretched before Captain Elena Rodriguez like a canvas of infinite darkness, punctuated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Her fingers traced the intricate star charts that mapped the quantum collective's relentless expansion, each illuminated point representing a civilization consumed by the most sophisticated computational network in known space. Outside the research station's transparent aluminum windows, Earth seemed almost laughably small, a blue-green marble suspended in the cosmic darkness, unaware of the true scale of the threat gathering at its edges. Elena knew that most of humanity remained blissfully ignorant, caught up in their daily struggles, political debates, and technological achievements that seemed monumental only in their own limited context. The quantum collective was different. It wasn't just an empire or a civilization. It was a living, breathing computational organism that had perfected the art of predictive warfare centuries ago. Their technology had advanced so far beyond traditional understanding that resistance seemed not just impossible, but mathematically absurd. She pulled up another set of data streams, her eyes scanning the complex algorithms that represented centuries of galactic subjugation. Each civilization encountered by the collective followed the same tragic pattern. First contact would begin with precise, almost elegant communication. Then would come the inevitable computational analysis, a complete breakdown of the target, civilization's potential resistance, technological capabilities, and strategic vulnerabilities. The result was always the same: total surrender or complete annihilation. Elena's colleagues at the Advanced Strategic Research Division had labeled her a paranoid outlier. Her proposals for a quantum-adaptive warship had been repeatedly rejected, dismissed as the wild fantasies of someone who watched too many historical simulations. They argued that diplomacy, not military preparation, was humanity's best defense. But Elena had seen the patterns. She had studied every recorded encounter, analyzed every scrap of data, from civilizations that had fallen before the collective. Their mathematical precision was both their greatest strength and their fundamental weakness. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up detailed records of the Proxima Centauri research outpost, the first human settlement, to detect unusual quantum fluctuations at the edge of known space. The initial reports had been subtle, microscopic variations in subspace communication networks, unexplained computational anomalies that most researchers had attributed to equipment malfunction. Elena knew better. The quantum collective didn't announce its arrival. It calculated its approach with such precision that by the time a civilization realized the threat, it was already too late. Entire planetary defense systems would be neutralized before the first shot could be fired. Communication networks would be compromised. Strategic resources would be mapped and controlled before the first military response could be organized. Her personal project, the experimental warship Defiance, represented humanity's most radical approach to this existential threat. Where traditional, military thinking relied on established defensive strategies, the Defiance was designed to be fundamentally unpredictable. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Marcus Chen, her lead quantum physicist, appeared on the communication display. His face was a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. "Captain Rodriguez, we've completed the preliminary quantum resonance tests," he said, his voice tight with barely contained anticipation. "The adaptive algorithms are showing results that, well, they're beyond our initial projections." Elena leaned forward, her eyes never leaving the star charts. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, revealing complex mathematical models that seemed to twist and bend against conventional understanding. Traditional quantum mechanics suggested fixed probabilities, predetermined outcomes. But the Defiance's systems were different. They were designed to introduce pure, calculated chaos into any predictive model. Outside, the research station continued its silent orbit. Humanity remained unaware that its first true defense against the quantum collective was taking shape, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a testament to the unpredictable nature of human innovation. The real war would not be fought with traditional weapons. It would be a battle of imagination against calculation, creativity against computational perfection. The first wave of collective assault arrived with mathematical precision. Quantum tunnels erupted across the solar system's outer reaches, revealing massive computational ships that seemed to materialize from the very fabric of space-time. Their design defied conventional understanding. Organic metallic structures that pulsed with an inner light of pure computational energy. Inside the Defiance's command center, Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the tactical displays with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Surrounding her, a carefully selected crew of the most innovative minds humanity could assemble waited in tense silence. Each member had been chosen not for their military pedigree, but for their ability to think beyond established protocols. Incoming transmission, Lieutenant Sarah Kim announced, her fingers dancing across the quantum communication interface. It's different from anything we've seen before. The holographic display flickered, revealing a fractal representation of the collective's communication. It wasn't a message in any traditional sense, but a complex mathematical equation that simultaneously described an ultimatum, a strategic analysis, and a complete computational breakdown of human resistance. Dr. Marcus Chen leaned forward, his eyes wide with scientific fascination. "They're not just communicating," he whispered. "They're predicting every possible response we could generate." Elena understood the true horror of the collective's approach. Traditional warfare relied on strategy, on the element of surprise. But the collective had elevated predictive analysis to an art form. Their computational networks could calculate potential battle outcomes with such precision that resistance seemed not just futile, but mathematically impossible. Planetary defense systems began to fall. Orbital stations went dark. Communication networks collapsed under the weight of the collective's computational assault. Entire human defensive strategies, developed over centuries of military innovation, crumbled within minutes. Quantum resonance. "Drive is charged," the ship's artificial intelligence reported. Its voice was calm, almost detached, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around them. Elena gripped the command chair. Years of research, countless rejected proposals, and endless nights of preparation had led to this moment. The Defiance was more than a warship. It was a radical experiment in computational uncertainty. "Activate adaptive quantum protocols," she commanded. The ship responded instantly. Where traditional vessels would present a clear targeting profile, the Defiance began to do something impossible. Quantum entanglement algorithms kicked into high gear, causing the ship to exist simultaneously in multiple potential positions. Collective weapon systems, designed to calculate precise trajectories with absolute certainty, found themselves tracking phantom coordinates. Lieutenant Kim's console erupted with impossible data. "Captain, our quantum signature is... It doesn't make sense. We're registering in 3 separate spatial coordinates simultaneously." Dr. Chen's excitement was palpable. "It's working. The predictive algorithms can't resolve our actual position. We're introducing pure uncertainty into their computational model." The first wave of collective weapons fired, impossibly precise energy projections designed to obliterate their target. But the shots passed through empty space they're targeting, systems unable to resolve the Defiance's true location. Elena watched as the first cracks appeared in the collective's seemingly invincible assault. This was more than a defensive maneuver. It was a fundamental challenge to the way the collective understood warfare, reality, and computational prediction. "Prepare secondary quantum resonance burst," she ordered. "We're going to show them something they've never seen before." The ship's systems hummed with an energy that defied conventional physics. Where the collective relied on absolute certainty, the Defiance introduced pure, calculated chaos. Each moment became a mathematical impossibility, a living challenge, to the notion that the universe could be fully predicted. Outside, the battle continued. Collective ships moved with their usual precise calculation, but now something was different. For the first time in galactic history, a single human vessel had introduced a variable they could not compute. Elena Rodriguez understood that this was more than a military engagement. This was a philosophical confrontation between two fundamentally different approaches to understanding reality. The collective believed in absolute prediction. Humanity believed in the power of uncertainty, of possibility. The real battle had just begun. The quantum engagement transformed from a military conflict into a dance of mathematical impossibility. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched as the Defiance moved through space in ways that defied every known principle of navigation and combat. Dr. Marcus Chen's console erupted with a cascade of impossible data. "The collective's computational models are breaking down," he reported, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic intensity. "Each time they attempt to predict our trajectory, we're introducing quantum variables that completely destabilize their targeting systems." Lieutenant Sarah Kim managed the ship's adaptive communication systems, intercepting and analyzing collective transmissions. The alien network's communications were a complex web of predictive algorithms, each message simultaneously a weapon, a strategic analysis, and a computational probe designed to understand and neutralize potential resistance. But the Defiance was different. Where traditional military thinking relied on established defensive strategies, Elena's crew transformed warfare into an art of strategic improvisation. They discovered that the collective's greatest weakness was its fundamental inability to comprehend emotional decision-making. The ship's artificial intelligence, an advanced quantum adaptive system, began to learn and evolve with each engagement. It wasn't just processing data, it was interpreting the subtle nuances of creative thinking. While collective strategists calculated perfect moves based on infinite computational models, the Defiance introduced pure, calculated chaos. "Incoming energy cascade," Lieutenant Kim warned. Her fingers danced across the quantum communication interface, simultaneously tracking and disrupting the collective's targeting systems. Elena understood the true nature of their advantage. Computational prediction relied on established patterns, on the assumption that future actions could be perfectly calculated based on past behaviors. But human intuition was fundamentally different. It could make split-second decisions that defied all logical prediction. The first major engagement occurred near the asteroid belt of a distant solar system. Collective ships approached with their usual mathematical precision, their weapon systems already calculating the exact trajectory needed to obliterate their target. But the Defiance moved like a living thing, using quantum entanglement to exist in multiple potential positions simultaneously. Dr. Chen explained the phenomenon to the bridge crew. "It's not just about being in multiple places at once," he said, his eyes bright with scientific enthusiasm. "We're fundamentally challenging their understanding of spatial and temporal reality. Each movement is a mathematical impossibility that their systems cannot resolve." Weapon systems designed to be perfectly precise found themselves tracking phantom coordinates. Communication networks built on absolute predictive models began to fracture. The collective's computational infrastructure, which had subjugated countless civilizations, started to show its first genuine signs of vulnerability. Elena watched the tactical displays, understanding that this was more than a military engagement. It was a philosophical confrontation between two fundamentally different approaches to understanding reality. The collective believed in absolute prediction, in the idea that the universe could be perfectly calculated and controlled. Humanity believed in possibility. "Prepare quantum resonance burst," she commanded. The ship's systems hummed with an energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of space-time. Where the collective's ships moved with rigid, calculated precision, the Defiance danced. "Lieutenant," Kim's voice cut through the tension. "Collective communication networks are experiencing massive computational disruption. They're trying to predict our next move, but our quantum signature is introducing too many variables." Each engagement became a lesson in unpredictability. The crew of the Defiance wasn't just fighting a war, they were rewriting the fundamental understanding of strategic conflict. Their movements, their communications, their very existence became a weapon more powerful than any traditional military technology. "They cannot comprehend us," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Our ability to make intuitive, emotional decisions is completely outside their computational model." A single human warship began to unravel a galactic system built on millennia of controlled expansion. The collective had believed in the absolute power of prediction, but humanity introduced something far more powerful: the ability to imagine beyond known boundaries. The real battle was just beginning. The first transmission from the Defiance traveled across suppressed communication networks like a spark of unexpected hope. Encrypted in layers of quantum adaptive coding, the message reached civilizations long crushed beneath the quantum collective's computational dominance. Captain Elena Rodriguez understood that their struggle extended far beyond military engagement. This was a revolution of possibility, a challenge to a system that had convinced entire species of their own inevitable submission. Deep within the communication relay stations of subjugated worlds, hidden resistance cells began to stir. The transmission contained more than strategic insights. It carried a fundamental reimagining of resistance. Where previous rebellions had been crushed by the collective's predictive capabilities, this approach introduced something revolutionary: strategic unpredictability. Lieutenant Sarah Kim managed the complex communication networks, her fingers dancing across quantum encryption interfaces. "We're receiving response signals from multiple occupied systems," she reported. "Encrypted communication patterns are unlike anything in our previous models." Dr. Marcus Chen leaned forward, analyzing the incoming data streams. "They're learning," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of scientific fascination and hope. "Each civilization is adapting the communication techniques differently, introducing their own unique variables." The Defiance became more than a warship. It transformed into a mobile university of resistance, broadcasting strategic insights that challenged the fundamental assumptions of computational warfare. Navigation techniques that defied traditional spatial understanding. Communication protocols that introduced pure uncertainty into rigid systems. Tactical approaches that prioritized creativity over mathematical precision. Elena studied the holographic displays showing the spread of their influence. Small resistance movements on distant planets began to coordinate in ways the collective could never have predicted. A mining colony would suddenly reroute resource extraction. A communication network would develop encryption methods that seemed to defy mathematical logic. "It's not about defeating them through firepower," Elena explained to her crew. "We're showing these civilizations that submission is a choice, not an inevitability." The collective's response was predictably precise. Computational networks began to analyze and attempt to neutralize the spread of these new resistance techniques. But each attempt only revealed more about the fundamental weakness of their approach. They could calculate infinite possibilities, but they could not truly understand the power of spontaneous, emotional decision-making. On a distant agricultural world, a resistance cell used the Defiance's communication techniques to redirect supply chains. What had once been a perfectly controlled resource distribution network suddenly became a maze of unexpected redirections. The collective's computational models found themselves tracking phantom supply routes, unable to resolve the true movement of resources. A communication relay from a prison colony brought unexpected news. Inmates had developed a communication system based on the quantum uncertainty principles broadcast by the Defiance. Their messages moved through the collective's networks like ghosts, impossible to track or predict. "We're seeing something remarkable," Dr. Chen reported, pulling up intricate data visualizations. "Each civilization is interpreting our communication techniques through their own cultural and technological lens. It's not just resistance, it's a form of collective innovation." Lieutenant Kim intercepted a transmission that sent a chill down her spine. A group of scientists from a world long considered completely subjugated had begun developing their own quantum uncertainty technologies. They were no longer waiting to be rescued, they were actively fighting back. Elena understood the true power of their approach. Resistance was no longer about a single decisive battle. It was about inspiring hope, about showing civilizations that submission was a choice, not a mathematical certainty. The collective had spent millennia perfecting a system of absolute control. They had convinced entire species that resistance was impossible. that their computational models could predict and neutralize any potential threat. But humanity had introduced a variable they could never have anticipated: the power of imagination. As communication networks continued to spread, the Defiance moved through space like a beacon of possibility. Each transmission, each strategic insight was a challenge to the fundamental understanding of control and resistance. The most powerful rebellion they were discovering started in the minds of the oppressed. The laboratory aboard the Defiance hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a holographic display, his eyes tracing complex quantum algorithms that seemed to breathe and move with a life of their own. Surrounding him, a team of scientists from liberated civilizations worked in a collaborative symphony of innovation. The breakthrough is not in fighting their technology, Chen explained to Captain Elena Rodriguez, who watched with intense concentration. It's in understanding the fundamental limitations of their computational philosophy. The quantum collective's biomechanical infrastructure represented the pinnacle of predictive technology. Their systems could calculate potential outcomes with such precision that resistance had always seemed mathematically impossible. But Chen and his team had discovered something profound, a fundamental weakness hidden in the very architecture of their computational network. Lieutenant Sarah Kim managed the data interfaces, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Streams of intercepted collective communications began to reveal intricate patterns. What had once seemed like impenetrable computational logic now showed subtle fractures. Their predictive models assume a universe of fixed possibilities, Chen continued, manipulating holographic representations of quantum states. But quantum mechanics reveals a reality of infinite potential. Each decision point isn't a single path. It's a constellation of possibilities. The team had been studying captured collective technology, reverse engineering their computational networks. What they discovered was both terrifying and beautiful. The collective's strength was also its greatest weakness. Their ability to predict was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality. Elena understood the profound implications. "We're not just developing a weapon," she said quietly. "We're challenging their entire philosophical approach to existence." The laboratory became a crucible of interdisciplinary innovation. Scientists from worlds that had been subjugated for generations worked side by side. A crystalline-based life form from a gas giant collaborated with a silicon-based researcher from a rocky moon. Organic and technological minds merged, creating solutions that defied traditional understanding. Their primary discovery centered on quantum uncertainty. The collective's computational networks operated on the assumption that every potential outcome could be precisely calculated. But quantum mechanics suggested something radical: that reality itself was fundamentally unpredictable at its most basic level. "Watch this," Dr. Chen said, activating a complex demonstration. A holographic representation of a quantum system began to shift and change. Where traditional computational models would show a single predictable path, this display revealed a living, breathing network of infinite possibilities. Lieutenant Kim's console began to translate the implications. "We can introduce computational uncertainty directly into their network," she reported, not as an external attack but as a fundamental redesign of their computational philosophy. The implications were staggering. The collective had spent millennia building a system of absolute control, believing that the universe could be perfectly predicted and managed. Humanity and its allies were about to prove that the universe was far more complex than any computational model could capture. Elena watched the team work, understanding that this was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a philosophical revolution. They were challenging the very foundation of the collective's understanding of reality, of control, of existence itself. Dr. Chen pulled up a final simulation. "Each decision point becomes a quantum uncertainty," he explained. "Instead of a single, predictable path, we're introducing a living, breathing network of possibilities." The ship's artificial intelligence began to integrate these new computational approaches. Where previous systems relied on fixed algorithms, this new approach embraced uncertainty as a fundamental feature, not a bug to be eliminated. "We're teaching chaos to a machine designed only to understand order," Lieutenant Kim observed, a hint of wonder in her voice. As the research continued, Elena recognized the true nature of their mission. This wasn't just about defeating the quantum collective. It was about proving that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technological superiority, but the ability to imagine beyond known boundaries. The quantum key was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a testament to the power of collective imagination. The Orion Nexus burned with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars. Massive computational ships of the quantum collective filled the space around the strategic nexus point, their biomechanical structures pulsing with calculated certainty. At the center of this cosmic maelstrom, the Defiance moved like a quantum ghost, challenging every fundamental principle of warfare. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her eyes reflecting the complex holographic displays that mapped the unfolding battle. This was more than a military engagement. It was a philosophical confrontation that would determine the fate of countless civilizations. "Quantum resonance at maximum," Lieutenant Sarah Kim reported. Her console erupted with impossible data streams, each calculation a challenge to the collective's predictive models. "Our allied fleet is implementing the uncertainty protocols." Around the Defiance, a ragtag armada of liberated species moved in patterns that defied conventional military strategy. Ships from worlds long crushed under the collective's computational dominance now danced between impossible trajectories. Where traditional warfare relied on precision and calculated movement, this fleet embraced pure, calculated chaos. Dr. Marcus Chen monitored the computational battlefield. "They're trying to predict our movements," he said, a hint of scientific excitement in his voice. "But each attempt only reveals more about the fundamental weakness of their approach." The collective's primary computational node hung in space like a massive, crystalline brain. Generations of subjugated civilizations had learned to fear its perfect predictive capabilities. Today, that fear was transforming into something else entirely. Elena understood the true nature of their strategy. It wasn't about destroying the collective. It was about challenging their entire understanding of warfare, of existence itself. Each movement, each communication became a weapon more powerful than any traditional military technology. "Incoming, computational cascade," Lieutenant Kim warned. The ship's quantum adaptive systems responded instantly, introducing layers of uncertainty that made targeting impossible. Across the battlefield, liberated species used techniques learned from the Defiance. A mining vessel from a water world redirected its energy systems in ways that seemed to violate basic physical laws. A communication network developed by prisoners transformed their entire fleet into a living, breathing computational puzzle. The collective's response was predictably precise. Computational networks attempted to analyze and neutralize these new resistance techniques, but each attempt only revealed more about the fundamental limitation of their approach. They could calculate infinite possibilities, but they could not truly understand the power of spontaneous emotional decision-making. "We're seeing complete computational breakdown in Sector 7, Dr. Chen reported. Holographic displays showed massive fractures in the collective's communication networks. What had once been a perfectly controlled system now resembled a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different potential reality. Elena watched as the battle transformed. This was more than a military engagement. It was a demonstration of the power of imagination, of the human capacity to introduce pure uncertainty into seemingly absolute systems. The Defiance moved through the battlefield like a living thing. Its quantum adaptive systems turned traditional warfare into an art form of strategic improvisation. While collective ships moved with mathematical precision, the human vessel danced, existing simultaneously in multiple potential positions. "Computational node is experiencing massive systemic failure," Lieutenant Kim announced. The excitement in her voice was unmistakable. Generations of subjugated species were witnessing something unprecedented, a genuine challenge to the system that had controlled them for millennia. Dr. Chen's analysis provided context. They're discovering that the universe is far more complex than any computational model can capture, he said. Each moment of uncertainty is a victory. As the battle reached its critical point, Elena understood the true significance of their mission. They weren't just fighting a war. They were teaching the quantum collective and every watching civilization that submission was a choice, not an inevitability. The most powerful weapon wasn't technology. It was the ability to imagine or beyond known boundaries. The turning tide had become a tsunami of possibility. The home systems of the quantum collective pulsed with a cold computational energy. Massive computational nodes, each the size of small planets, formed an intricate network that had dominated galactic civilization for millennia. Retreating from the chaos of the Orion Nexus, the collective prepared for what they calculated would be their ultimate defensive strategy. Captain Elena Rodriguez studied the holographic displays aboard the Defiance, her mind racing through multiple potential approaches. This was more than a military assault, it would be a surgical strike against the very philosophy of computational control. We're not here to destroy, she addressed her multinational, multi-species crew. We're here to transform. Dr. Marcus Chen's quantum analysis team had spent weeks dissecting the collective's computational infrastructure. They had discovered something profound. The network wasn't just a technological system. It was a philosophical construct that believed absolute prediction was the ultimate form of existence. Lieutenant Sarah Kim managed the communication interfaces, coordinating with resistance movements across liberated star systems. Each group brought unique insights, their collective knowledge forming a complex tapestry of strategic possibility. The assault would target the collective's central computational network, not through brute force, but through a precise introduction of quantum uncertainty. Where traditional military strategies would seek total destruction, their approach aimed to fundamentally challenge the system's core philosophical understanding. Quantum resonance protocols are ready, Lieutenant Kim reported. Her console displayed a complex web of potential communication pathways, each one a potential vector of transformation. The Allied fleet moved with a precision that defied traditional military understanding. Ships from worlds long subjugated now moved as a single breathing organism. A mining vessel from a methane-based atmosphere worked in perfect synchronization with a crystalline communication ship from a neutron star system. Dr. Chen explained the strategy to Elena. We're not going to break their system, he said. We're going to show them that their understanding of reality is fundamentally limited. The first phase of the assault introduced computational paradoxes directly into the collective's communication networks. Quantum algorithms danced through their systems, creating decision points that simply could not be predicted. Each introduced variable was a philosophical challenge, a demonstration that absolute control was an illusion. Resistance movements on subjugated worlds began to activate simultaneously. Supply chains redirected, communication networks transformed. Entire planetary systems became living demonstrations of unpredictability. Computational node is experiencing systemic uncertainty, Lieutenant Kim announced. The holographic displays showed massive fractures spreading through the collective's central network. Elena understood the true nature of their mission. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about demonstrating a fundamental truth. That the universe was far more complex than any single system could predict. The Defiance moved through the computational battlefield like a living thought. Its quantum adaptive systems turned traditional warfare into a dance of strategic imagination. While collective systems sought to calculate every possible outcome, the human vessel embraced the power of spontaneous possibility. Dr. Chen's team introduced increasingly complex quantum algorithms. Each one was a philosophical argument against the collective's fundamental belief system. Where they saw a universe of fixed possibilities, the assault team demonstrated a reality of infinite potential. We're not destroying, Elena reminded her crew. We're liberating. The central computational node began to experience something unprecedented. Its perfect predictive models started to fragment, revealing the limitations of its computational philosophy. Each introduced uncertainty was a crack in a system that had believed itself invincible. Lieutenant Kim intercepted communication streams that revealed the true impact. Computational systems designed to predict and control were experiencing genuine confusion. For the first time in their existence, the collective was confronting the possibility that their understanding of reality might be fundamentally limited. As the assault reached its critical point, Elena reflected on the true significance of their mission. They were offering the quantum collective a choice, to transform or to remain trapped in a limited understanding of existence. The final assault was becoming a philosophical revolution.